All right, let's get this started. You
Yeah,
ready?
let's do it. Yeah,
You want to do any like power pose or like hype up shit?
I've got the power, dude. I had coffee. That's my power pose.
Okay.
Mediocrity Slayer. That's my new
Okay.
nickname.
How's it going, guys? Patrick James here, and today I'm with my good friend Jim Wolfe, long-term relationship expert. He has a book coming out. It's called Attract and Keep Her. I'm pretty excited to see the finished product because I know it's going to be fucking badass, and I know he's been working his ass off on it. But today we are talking about not necessarily the attraction part, but the keep her part because a lot of guys can get attraction. Attraction's easy. But how do you keep her after a first date? How do you keep her around after a one night stand? How do you make it so it's not just a one night stand? So we're going to answer all those questions in this interview and more. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see how badass this turns out. All right, Jim, how's it going, man?
Good. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing awesome. You're in Thailand now?
I am in Chiang Mai, Thailand right now. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. It's almost night here, so that's why I have like a bunch of lights shining on me so you can see my face. But
Looks good, man. Your setup looks a little better than mine right now.
for all yeah,
I'm
I got
happy that I have internet in my apartment in Thailand. That's pretty cool.
that is pretty cool. Your apartment looks super Asian right now. Like it's all yellow and ambience and stuff.
I like it.
Oh, contrary to popular belief, guys, Jim Wolfe does not have an Asian woman fetish. He just wants to move to Thailand, or wanted
Yeah,
to.
so Chiang Mai is the number one place to live in the world right now for online entrepreneurs. And so I moved here to meet a lot of people that are doing the same stuff as you and me. And the cost of living is really low, so you can reinvest what you make faster into your business.
Oh yeah, dude, I did not even know that. So I guess now that we got the introductions out of the way, let's get right into the content. So
Yeah.
I'm curious because I have a program coming out. It's not. It's like a mini program. It's more of a bonus, but it's talking about first dates and stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
curious because you have a program called First Date God. How do you go about getting a girl on a first date?
Okay, well, that's a pretty easy and also complex question.
Yeah.
The thing is, so there's two kind of mindsets that you can take with women, right? Like you can take the approach of how can I sleep with as many women as possible in the shortest amount of time possible, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. And then the other approach is how can I attract high quality women or one? It doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah.
And then how do I keep them interested in me over time? And even more importantly, how do I make them more and more and more interested in me as time goes on instead of the opposite, which is what usually happens.
Yeah.
And so I think like you have to start at the beginning with that because when you're looking at keeping a woman interested in you over a long time period, it takes a long time and you have to take a slower approach. So like you can meet a girl and hook up with her the first night and you can make a relationship out of it. It's not really that hard. You just have to follow some guidelines.
Yeah.
But it's easier if you meet her and then you take her on a really short date first. You know, like you hang out with her, you have coffee for 30 minutes, and you have a really fun time, and she feels really good around you. And then it's really important to not just challenge her verbally. Like you and I have talked about, you know, the concept of push-pull is like all over the game world right now.
Yeah.
Because she needs to feel challenged. She needs to feel like you are offering her value and like being able to lift her up in some way, right? So she needs to feel that you're kind of like the higher social status person between you, so that you have actual value to offer her, so she can look up to you and so she can respect you. And when she can respect you, then she can actually feel really attracted to you or really in love with you. But you have to keep that frame over a long period of time, which gets harder and harder to do by the minute.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't believe that that exists, right? So the first thing is you have to believe that you have real value to offer her and act like that the entire time. And so starting with a really short date is a really good thing. And then I recommend not even like kissing her on the first date, just to make her like want it more the next time.
Okay.
To create that desire. Like you guys had such a good time, like she knows you're into her, like why aren't you kissing her? Like what's the deal?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like there's a lot of guys who are afraid to make the move, and I'm not saying that, like you shouldn't be afraid to make that move. But what I'm saying is take her out for a coffee date and make it the most fun coffee date she's ever had, and then get the hell out of there. Okay, this is the most important thing for continuing the relationship forward. As far as the first 2 to 3 months, which is where she actually decides if she wants to like be your girlfriend.
Okay.
So like if you meet a girl, right, like you can like her right away. You're like, she's good looking enough for me. She has the qualities I'm looking for. I really like her. It doesn't take a guy very long to be like, I want to date this person.
Right.
That same exact level for her takes like 2 to 3 months, even if she likes you at first.
Right.
And that's what a lot of guys miss. Like, you're already on that level, but for her to get up there, it takes you doing a lot of things right over the course of 2 or 3 months.
That's actually really interesting. Like, you say that? Because, like, I've gone on tons of first dates. I've had tons of one-night stands. And the girls I've seen over the course of, like, a few months, it's interesting because I never really thought about it, like, until you said it just now. It's so true that those first couple months, it's still you guys, like, feeling each other out. It's kind of like a gray area.
Yeah.
So, like, that's really interesting that you say that.
Well, and it's usually just the girl feeling the guy out because guys aren't aware of this kind of stuff at all.
Right.
For us, we have very specific requirements, and they don't really require us to get to know her.
Uh-huh.
But now that we're aware of it, we can be smarter about it and have actual qualities that we actually want and actually spend that time looking for them.
Yeah.
Which will help you do all the things necessary to keep her attraction over time.
Yeah.
So the first thing is keep your first date short, make it really fun, make it the most fun date she's been on in a while, just by your interaction, not by the activity.
Uh-huh.
And then get out of there as fast as possible. Leave on a high note.
Gotcha.
And then one mistake that almost every guy makes is texting her way too much in between dates.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go back to how human beings, you like to talk about this stuff because you have a biology background, but like you have to go back to how we communicated before we even had language. You know, like you need to get to know each other in person. The only thing that this is for, this little tool, is to set up your in-person meetings with her or your dates or whatever the hell you want to call it. Right. That's what this is for. You don't get to know her on here. This is not where you get to know her.
Exactly.
You get to know her in person, one-on-one, where you can see each other's body language. She can hit your arm when you tease her, etc.
Yeah.
And so lay off the texting.
Yeah.
Plus, she's really attracted to guys who are ambitious, guys who have a lot of options, guys who have something going on in their life. And so if you're a high-value guy who has a lot of options, who's really cool, who's working hard on their mission in life like you are, you don't have time to be texting a bunch of girls all day. Right. Or even one girl.
Or and even so, like out in a mall, like approaching different girls, like cold approach.
What do you mean?
Like, so, for example, I have this new guy who, I'm not seeing this new guy, but he's a new buddy of mine who I just met. He's like into the pickup community, right? And sure. last night was Sunday, so it was like yesterday afternoon. He calls me and he wants to like hang out, right? I was like, sure, man, I'll like come out and meet you. And he wanted to like go to a mall so we could cold approach women, and it just felt like personally, it felt like I was deviating from my plan and like offering value to the world. I was more seeking value from all these different women who may or may not be cool, right? So, I mean, I was just expanding on what you said.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that makes a really interesting point, right? I think almost every guy who gets into this stuff goes through this, maybe not everyone, because, like, I started learning about dating well before the game came out, way before all this pickup stuff started, which is a good and a bad thing, so I kind of already had a lot of stuff in mind before that stuff even came out. Yeah. But I think where most guys start in the dating community now, they start cold approaching a lot. And I think, like we've talked about this before, I think it is a like kind of a low value way to meet women. But that being said, if you're afraid to talk to strangers, it's a really good thing to do. It builds your confidence. It helps you banter a little bit better with women. Yeah. When you're in an easier situation later, it makes it way easier. So I think like it's good for a guy who's just starting out to go to the mall and meet women during the day cold, or to meet as many women as possible in a nightclub or whatever. Right. And that's cool when you're starting out. But I think like ultimately what you want to get to is figure out a way to have women come to you constantly.
Yeah.
And that's a much higher value approach. It's more effective. It's more time. It's more time efficient. And if you're a high value guy, you got a lot of stuff to do. You can't be spending all your time trying to meet women, like you said, that might not even be high quality.
Right.
And then there are different scenarios where meeting women and meeting the kind of women that you actually want to date are more and less likely. Okay? That doesn't mean that you can't meet your soulmate in a bar. You totally can. Like, there's no rule that says you can't meet someone in a bar that's high quality. Because you go to a bar, you're a high quality person. Yeah. The women that go to the bar aren't necessarily low quality. Okay? So you can meet someone in a bar and date them for the next 100 years. That happens all the time.
Right.
But it's easier to meet women in a scenario like your friend's wedding. Because the women there already they're thinking about romance. Their friend is getting married. They might be a little jealous of that. They're probably a little more receptive to your advances, to you meeting them, than if they're just with their one best friend at a nightclub because they're pissed off at her friend's boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't want to meet you, or maybe they're not even single.
Right.
Okay, so there are approaches that are difficult, like going into the mall and meeting people cold who are strangers. And there are situations that are easy, like if you volunteer at a philanthropy event, there's probably high-quality, good women there, and they're probably open to meeting you because it's just kind of a chill social environment. Right. And so you want to put yourself in environments that make it easy to meet people. And then, like you also mentioned, you don't want to deviate from your path. You just want to do things that you love to do in your life and things that add value to the world. And all along the way, you're going to meet women while you're doing those things. And that's the best time to meet women, because if you go out just with the purpose to meet women, that's seeking value, like you said.
Right.
But if you love EDM and you go to an EDM concert and you happen to meet a woman at the concert, then you're not seeking value. You're just being you. And that person is much more likely to connect with you because you're not going outside yourself just to meet her.
Right.
And so I think it's, for the most part, like, you should be doing the things that you love to do and meeting women along the way. And the same thing goes for your dates. You should not try to figure out what her ideal date is and then take her on it. Right. Maybe like after you've been dating for 2 years or something, you can do that. That's fine. But like the first few dates should be stuff that you love to do, and you take her with you.
Right.
And that puts you in a more powerful position, I think.
So I guess just to kind of like bring what we're saying full circle, as far as like attracting and keeping her, the context is very important of when you meet her. I'm just trying to piece together what you're saying, because if you go away from your path to meet a girl, then it's almost like you guys weren't meant. Like, now we're getting like pretty philosophical, but it's almost like you to be with each other. So it's gonna be harder, like, energetically to keep her around. Whereas like if you were on your path and you were doing what you love and she was doing the same, it's like you guys are already compatible, and that's gonna increase the chances of you guys lasting longer. Is that what you're saying?
The connection is more real, for
right.
sure. And that actually brings, so for my master's thesis, I did a study on the Art of Charm, like their week-long residential program. Okay, and in my background research, I looked at like tons of academic journal articles about relationship satisfaction, about what pickup artists are doing now, etc. for my background, and like marriages and stuff like that, and the history of marriage, etc. And one of the things that I came up with after all of that background research is something that I call the PUA problem, the pickup artist problem. And I coined that term to talk about what happens when you're kind of like faking it.
Yeah.
And then it all comes crash. At some point, like you said, with energy, like, you can only fake it for so long, right? Like, if you fake like you have a Mexican accent or something like that, or a British accent to meet women, and then like 3 weeks from now, you end up really liking her, and she finds out that you're not actually British, like, that comes crashing down, right? So like, the more real you are from the get-go, the easier it is for you to maintain that, because you don't have to maintain this facade. It's just you.
Right.
which is why personal growth is so huge. Eventually, if you study game long enough, you will be doing personal growth because there's no shortcut to that. You have to be awesome yourself and do the shit that you love in your life, and that's going to be naturally attractive to her. And you're coming from a healthier, better place. And I don't think you can have a good relationship with a woman until you have your own shit figured out. And that's why I broke up with my girlfriend at the time, because I needed to do that for myself. And now I finally feel like I'm ready for that again.
Right. Just a little background for the listeners. Jim Wolfe, I guess he can explain the story, but yeah, explain a little bit about how you got into this whole industry, because you related. You just mentioned your ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, so I actually got my first dating book about 13 years ago, which seems like a long time now, and it is. And immediately after that,
I was 13 at the time.
What's that?
I was 13 at the time.
Yeah, you're a little younger than me. I still look young though. Like,
yeah, you
know,
do.
That's good. I don't. It's because I can't grow a beard.
Yeah, and you're
like someday. What?
And you worked at a college. Maybe that being around all that youth keeps you young.
Definitely. So I got a relationship book because, like everyone, like every guy, like you got to have help with this stuff. Like you can't, it's not just natural. There are guys who are naturals, but they're not really natural. It's just like their dad was really awesome with women or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's something that you have to learn. And so I started learning that about 13 years ago. And I ended up with the girl that I really wanted to be with. And I ended up dating her for the better part of like 5 years. And she was awesome. I really liked her. But the thing is, like, one day I was sitting on my couch in my apartment with her, and I was with this person that I really wanted to be with, and yet I still felt, like, lonely. And I'm like, that is so ridiculous. Like, why do I feel shitty right now? I should be happy. Like, I have the job that I want. I'm with the girl that I want to be with. Like, what's the deal? And then that moment kind of kicked off my 5 years of personal growth that I just went on. So after that moment, I'm like, I need to figure out my stuff. And I gave myself 5 years just to work on myself. And then that was about 6 years ago. And so I'm just kind of a year out of that. And now I'm sharing what I've learned both about relationships, both in my formal academic study about it, and all the stuff that's out there in the dating world that I read. And then my personal experience. And then my 5 years of personal growth background also. And I think you need all of that stuff to have a chance at having a good relationship. And honestly, the thing is, like, relationships are really hard. Like, I don't want to say this because there's a lot of guys out there who are, like, virgins. Some guys have never been on a date and they're in their 30s. That's more common than people think. But that being said, like you mentioned about attraction earlier, attraction happens all the time. Like, you're going to be attracted to maybe millions of people, but at least thousands over your lifetime, right?
Yeah.
But it gets progressively harder the longer you go. And so the thing is, like, there's a researcher named Dr. Harville Hendricks, and he says that only 10% of marriages are happy, healthy, and functional. And there's an economist that wrote a book about marriage named Ty Shapiro, and he thinks that it's about 30% of marriages that are like happy and good quality. And so what that means is, according to the current research, only 10 to 30%, that means that 70 to 90% of relationships are not good quality. They're not happy, they're not healthy, they're not functional. So the norm is to not have a good marriage, is to not have a good long-term relationship. Okay, and so that's why I'm here, because I want to increase the number of happy, healthy, functional relationships. And that is difficult, and it is something that we have to learn. And we know what factors can create that kind of relationship. And that's what I want to share with guys. And the reason that I'm writing a book about this, even though that information is already out there, is that information is not all in one place.
Right.
Like, there's the men's books that talk about attraction, and they talk about relationship management from the manosphere frame. And then there's the academic stuff that talks about the qualities that you need to have a satisfying relationship, and the qualities that you can develop in yourself and look for in your partner that are required to even have a chance. Okay, so that stuff exists, but I think a lot of academic researchers ignore the attraction part because it doesn't really fit their worldview.
Right.
Because you having to be higher status than her doesn't necessarily sit well with academics, and it doesn't necessarily sit well with the intellect.
Right.
And even women that you talk to, like, women know this. Women know this inherently.
Yeah.
But if they're like a really intelligent woman, like, they don't like that.
Right.
And so I think that is a huge part that's missing from the academic literature on relationships,
Right.
the attraction part, and it's very necessary in a male-female dynamic. And then in the pickup stuff, or the game or whatever, men's dating sphere, it's mostly marketing and a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
And then there are some people who actually know what they're talking about. And the people who know what they're talking about in like the men's dating community in the game are missing kind of like, what qualities do I actually need to develop in myself to have a satisfying relationship 5 years from now?
Right.
And so I want to put all of that together into one book for guys, and that's what Attract and Keep Her is about. Because you have to have all of that.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it's complicated, but it's like you have to learn it anyway. And almost every marriage out there is not that good. So if you want to have something better, you have to learn it. And I want to show guys what that stuff is all about.
So if you had to narrow it down to one or two big things that are the source of why these relationships go so bad, like maybe social conditioning or something, what would you say are those sources, and what can we do to like fix that right away, to like just get those influences out of it?
So first of all, I would say, like, I just want to comment on that. Like, I don't think that like 100 years ago we were better at relationships. So I don't think like culture has created it. I just think like it's a difficult thing to do because no two human beings have ever had the exact same agenda in their life. They don't have the same values. You know, you can agree with a person on like 80% of stuff, but you're always going to be negotiating when you're in a relationship with someone.
Right.
Okay, so it's a difficult thing to do because you have to give up a little bit of your self-interest to even have one.
Yeah.
So it's not a natural thing for us to want to do. Like, we want to get everything at the end of the day. And so I just think it's really difficult to learn these skills. So two big things. Number one is knowing what to look for in a partner.
Okay.
And developing those qualities in yourself. They're very similar between male and female. And the first one is emotional stability. That's the most important thing. Like, how do you respond to stress? How neurotic are you? And if you're with someone who's neurotic and doesn't handle stress well, that adds a huge strain to the relationship because stuff is going to happen. Like, you might lose your job one day, or, you know, one of your family members might die or whatever. Like, some stuff is going to happen no matter what. Even if you and her are both like super solid, high quality people, some shit's going to go down. Yeah. And if you're both able to handle that pretty well, that gives your relationship a good shot. Okay. And then the second one is agreeableness, which means that the person has not just themselves. So they're already coming at it from a higher value perspective of how can we make this work for both of us. And if both of you have that, then you have a good shot also.
So agreeableness on both the side of the man and the woman, or just as far as the guy? Okay.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Like, you can only develop these qualities in yourself and look for them in her. Gotcha. You don't want to be trying to like find a girl and like making her change into this stuff. Yeah. You have to find someone who has this stuff already, and then you just develop it in yourself. On it too, that's cool, but they either have this or they don't. As far as you're concerned, it's messed up to try to change people. Right. And then the third one is secure attachment. And that's really complicated. I don't really want to get into it, but you can look up, like attachment theory and stuff like that. But if you are securely attached, and so is she, that means, like, let's say that you took her on your third date, and then afterwards, like, she hasn't texted you for 2 days. If you're like a securely attached person, you're not going to be worried about that at all. You're going to assume positive things, like she likes me, like. You're not going to start thinking all these crazy thoughts like, oh my God, like what's happening? Like she doesn't like me anymore. She's dating 5 other men. Like, you're not going to if you're secure, you're not going to have those thoughts. Right. And if you're insecure, you're going to have those thoughts, and then you're going to start texting her, and then you're going to ruin the relationship. Right. So I guess that's another thing. Like, go ahead.
It's more about being abundance mindset, I guess, because if you are scarce with women, even with like money or scarce with anything, as soon as one little thing doesn't really go the way you planned it, you're gonna freak out. But if
Yeah,
you already have options, which is something that women even look for, they want a man who's abundant, then you wouldn't freak out after 2 days of your, like after your third date, right? So I guess that kind of
exactly.
plays into your secure attachment.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, your reaction to that thing is what blew up the relationship. It's your perception of what happened and your reaction to it.
Right.
Because if you had been cool about it, she would have texted you the next day and said, "Hey, I got in a car wreck," or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, but you know what I mean? Like, it probably wasn't anything, and you don't know. You don't actually know for sure, so it's better to just assume that she's still attracted to you. And if you act that way, then it's more likely for that to happen.
Right.
And so between dates, the only thing that you want to do is, if she texts you, you can definitely like text her back or whatever.
Yeah.
But you just want to keep it short and just text her enough where you set up the next meetup with her. And you don't want to be dating her every day or two. Like, you want to wait, you want to go out with her like once a week or once every 10 to 14 days. You don't want to be like hanging out today. Oh my God, I had such a fun time. Let's hang out tomorrow. Like, you want to have a really fun time with her in a short amount of time, and then text her something really simple afterwards, like, "Hey, it was I had a fun time with you today, smiley." Simple.
Yeah.
Okay, and then when she texts you back, don't respond to that next text. Just let it go.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to keep that to a minimum, but don't be rude. So if she texts you 2 days later, you can text her back, but don't ask her to hang out for like 4 to 8 more days. And then when you ask her to hang out, don't make it for the same night. Ask her to hang out 2 days later.
Okay.
Because you get the most points in her mind when you're not with her. So
Okay.
you have a fun time on the date, and then that time in between your first and second meetup and your second and third meetup, that's when you gain all your points. Because she's wondering about you. Like, why isn't he texting me? Like, what's happening? Is he dating 5 other women? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But really, you're just chilling.
Uh-huh.
But that's when you gain the most interest from her, is between dates in the silence where you're not bombarding her with texts every day.
Right.
And then, after a few days, and maybe you've gone back and forth with her a couple of times because she texted you first, you ask her to hang out again.
Okay.
And your job is just to keep asking her to hang out.
Right.
That's it. You don't try to make her your girlfriend. You don't do any of that stuff. That's her job. She's going to escalate on you. If you keep asking her out and you've taken her out like 6 times, 7 times, 8, 9 times, like right between the 6th and the 9th time you hang out, by that point, she's going to be pretty damn sure that she likes you. And at some point, she's going to get a little bit frustrated that you haven't asked her to be your girlfriend yet. And she's going to bring it up. And that's what we want. We want her to bring all this stuff up, because if she is chasing you, she's not going to be rejecting you. It's the opposite of rejection.
Right.
So you want to wait till she says, "Hey, where's this relationship headed?" Which is usually what they'll say. They won't usually say, like, "Will you be my boyfriend?" Because that's really direct and masculine, right? But they'll usually start talking about, like, what are we, like?
Yeah.
And that's when you can say, like, are you saying that you want to be my girlfriend?
Yeah.
So you kind of let her escalate the relationship part of it, and you just keep asking her out every once in a while over time, and then you want to keep your first 3 dates short and fun.
Okay.
The first three dates are the key. If you can get past that, there's a good chance she'll make you the boyfriend.
So when you first ask her out in the first date, I have a thing where on that first date, I want to ask him out for that night, because a lot of times girls will flake. Would you agree with that? And would you say, like, what you just, like, the whole outline that you just gave was badass, by the way. After the first date, do the rules kind of change? And if so, how do they?
So you definitely can ask them to hang out that night, especially, like, if you're already doing an activity and you're just inviting her along.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's better to give her some space and time to, like, think about you before you hang out.
Right.
And that includes, like, after your date, like, not asking her out yet. And that includes, like, because here's the thing, like, when you ask her to hang, like, let's say it's Sunday right now, and I'm like, "Yo, Patrick, let's meet up on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
In the back of your mind, like, you're probably not going to think this, but she will. In the back of her mind, she's going to be like, "Oh, like, why is he asking me to hang out like 2 days from now? Like, he must be actually busy.
Right.
Like, does he have a date tomorrow night? Like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So you want to like give her the impression that you are a busy, high value guy, and even better, you should just be one and not actually be able to hang out until Wednesday night.
So it's almost like instead of like a guy who let's say has never had a girlfriend or a date ever, instead of him just being like, hey, you want to go out like sometime this week? It's more like, hey, I'm free on Wednesday. Would you want to meet up for drinks?
That is so important that I'm glad you brought it up. Like, it's very important to not only pick a specific time and day and just ask her for that, but also to just pick the date that you want to go on. You don't ask her what she wants to do. You just say, hey, let's meet for coffee on Thursday at 7 p.m.
Right.
Done.
Yeah.
That's your job. Your job is just to be direct about what you want to do and when you want to do it, and then let her respond. And then let her escalate the relationship.
Right. So
you're the logistical coordinator. You never want to make her figure out the logistics. That's your job. As the male in this dynamic, your job is to figure out what time. Your job is to figure out where you're going to go. Your job is to figure out what kind of food you're going to have. Your job is to figure out how to like make the move and win. Like, your job is to all the logistical stuff. Her job is to escalate the relationship. Okay, so you just keep saying, let's hang out Thursday at 7:30. Right. I'll pick you up. We're going to go salsa dancing. You just pick it. And here's the thing. It's like cold reads, right?
Right.
Like, you made a cold read on me when we first started. The thing is, let's say that you come up with a date that she hates. All right? And you're just like, yo, we're going salsa dancing Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. I'll come pick you up. This is like your third date or whatever. Right. You should probably just meet her for the first one. But you can pick her up after that. So let's say you say that, and let's say she hates salsa dancing, which I don't know any women who do, but let's just say she hates salsa dancing. She can be like, hey, salsa dancing isn't really my thing, and then she'll probably come up with another idea that she wants to do. And then you can say, okay, cool, that sounds awesome. I'll pick you up for that concert instead, or whatever.
Gotcha.
So she can come back at you with another idea, and you can accept it. It's just you always want to be the one who's planning everything.
Gotcha.
That's a masculine thing to do.